It was early morning in a small town where people liked their coffee strong and their gossip stronger. The sun had not fully risen, but the streets were already awake. Cars moved slowly through soft fog. Children waited at bus stops with backpacks swinging. The cafe on the corner, known for its sweet muffins and chalkboard signs, opened its glass doors to the first wave of customers. Inside, the air was warm. The smell of roasted beans and cinnamon drifted over wooden tables and metal chairs. A girl, quiet and polite, stood behind the counter. She wore the cafe's apron and a name tag that had faded letters. Most customers didn't read it. They smiled if they were kind. Some didn't look at her at all. But she saw everything. She noticed who got warm greetings and who didn't. She noticed who was told to sit anywhere and who was pointed to the back. She saw how smiles were given like gifts. Some people got more than others. No one said anything out loud, but there was a strange kind of rule that floated in the room. It was invisible but heavy, and it didn't treat everyone the same. That morning, just as the girl was wiping down a table near the window, the door opened again. A man walked in. He was tall and calm. He wore a coat with old pins on the chest and walked with care, like someone who had learned to step through hard places. Beside him was a dog. Not just any dog. A quiet, trained dog wearing a vest with a patch that said, "Service Animal." The girl behind the counter looked up and smiled. The man nodded back. He stood in line like everyone else. But the cafe manager, who had just stepped out from the back office, saw the dog and walked over fast. His eyes were sharp, and his words came out in a rush. "We can't have dogs in here. You'll need to leave it outside." The man stayed still. He gently patted the dog's head and replied in a calm voice, "She's a service dog. I'm a veteran. The law protects my right to bring her." The manager's face tightened. He looked around, as if checking to see who was watching. A few heads turned. The girl stepped closer. Her heart beat faster. She had read about this before. She knew service dogs were allowed in public places, even in restaurants and cafes. She opened her mouth and spoke clearly, even though her hands were shaking. "He's right. The law says service dogs can go anywhere people can go." The manager turned to her sharply. "You don't speak for the cafe." The man didn't argue. He had argued before in other places. He knew the tone. He knew when the words weren't worth it. He gave the girl a small nod, turned quietly, and walked out the door. The dog followed close, eyes watching her partner, ears alert. The cafe fell quiet. The girl stood where she was. No one said thank you. No one said anything at all. The manager looked at her, his voice low but hard. "If you want to keep working here, you don't talk back again. We're not here to play hero." She didn't answer. She only nodded. But inside, something heavy had fallen and broken. It was something that used to feel safe. Later that day, just before her shift ended, the manager called her into the office. There was no warning, no small talk. He didn't ask her to sit. "We've decided it's best you move on. This isn't the place for drama." He handed her a folded paper. Her last check. That was it. No goodbye. No thank you for showing up every morning on time. Just a quiet push out the door. She walked home under gray skies. The streets felt different now. Colder. Like the world had tilted a little to one side. A part of her wanted to cry. Another part was just still. Like her voice had been taken and packed away in a box she couldn't open. But far away, in another part of town, a message had already started moving. Quiet at first. A spark. A ripple. Came from a phone. A short message typed slowly by tired hands. And soon, that message would travel farther than the manager ever thought possible. But for now, the girl sat at her kitchen table, holding a warm mug, not knowing the world was about to knock back. The phone screen glowed in the quiet of a small room. The man who had been turned away from the cafe sat on the edge of his bed. His boots were beside him, clean but old. He had worn them through more than most people could imagine. On the nightstand was a picture of his unit. They were younger in the photo, smiling and close together. Some of them were gone now. A few were still in touch. He remembered each name, each laugh, each fall. The room was simple. A folded flag rested in a wooden case above the bookshelf. His dog lay nearby, her head on her paws, watching him with soft brown eyes. He reached down and touched her fur. She was quiet, always alert, always ready. She had been with him through the hardest nights. When the nightmares came, when the noise in his mind got too loud, when the crowds made him feel like he was still in a place he had already left. She had never failed him. He opened the messaging app on his phone and typed a few lines. He did not name the cafe. He did not mention the manager. He did not shout. He wrote only what had happened. Simple words. Clear truth. Turned away from a coffee shop this morning. Said my service dog was not allowed. Told them I was a Marine. They didn't care. I've had more respect in war than at home. He posted it with a photo. It showed the dog beside him sitting on a sidewalk bench. Her vest clear in the picture. His jacket with the old unit patch visible at the edge. He put the phone down and did not expect much. But far away, phones began to buzz. One in Georgia. One in California. Another in Texas. Old friends saw the post. A man with a beard and a limp paused at the photo. Another man in a barber shop showed it to his brother. A woman in uniform reposted it with a single word. Unacceptable. One by one, the men and women who had served with him remembered everything. Not just the battles. They remembered who had stayed up late to cover watch. Who had shared the last clean socks. Who had made everyone laugh when the sky was falling. They remembered how he never raised his voice unless someone was hurt. They remembered how he once pulled someone out from a flipped vehicle in the middle of a sandstorm. How he gave half his rations to a new recruit who had not eaten in 2 days. He had always stepped forward when it counted. Now it was their turn. The story kept moving. It reached groups made for veterans. It reached pages meant for families of fallen soldiers. It reached quiet corners of the internet where people shared stories they were too tired to say out loud. Then came the messages. One by one. Where was this? Do they have a name? He was my sergeant. We ride for him. Tell him he is not alone. In a town just 2 hours away, four Marines met in a garage filled with old flags and toolboxes. One wore a hoodie. Another had a prosthetic leg. They did not speak much. They nodded. They made a list. Coffee. Uniform. Service dog patch. Meet at dawn. They knew what to do. Another man, now a firefighter, made a call to 2 old teammates. They lived in the next state but said they could be there by morning. They did not ask why. Elsewhere, a young woman who had served in the same branch but never met the man saw the post and packed her uniform shirt in a small bag. She had seen too many like it. Black veterans disrespected. Dogs questioned. Laws ignored. She remembered her own father being asked if his medals were real. She remembered her brother being told to step aside at the airport, while others walked past him with loud support and praise. She said nothing out loud, but she circled a date on her calendar. By nightfall, the post had grown. People who had never served began sharing it. A teacher wrote that her student's dad was a vet and had faced the same thing. A bus driver posted a photo of himself in a flag cap with the words, "Support all who serve." Still, the man who wrote the post had no idea it had moved so far. He made dinner. He took his dog for a walk. He watched a movie halfway through and turned it off. The next morning, he woke early. He brewed a small pot of coffee and sat by the window. His dog curled up beside his feet. He checked his phone. His hands stopped moving. His breath caught. The post had over 50,000 shares. Hundreds of comments. Private messages. Phone calls missed. He scrolled slowly. Message after message. You deserve better. We're with you. This ends now. One message stood out. A name he had not seen in years. Simply read, "You always had our back. Tomorrow we've got yours." He smiled. Just a little. A tired smile. A knowing one. He looked down at his dog. Looks like we're not the only ones tired of silence. In another part of town, the girl who had been fired sat on her front porch. She held her phone in her hand but had not opened any apps. She felt like her heart was made of glass. Every step felt like it could shatter something. Her phone buzzed. A message from someone she barely knew. "Is this about you?" Attached was a screenshot of the post. She read it, her eyes filled with something warm and painful at the same time. She didn't reply. She just whispered into the wind. They saw, and far away, trucks filled with uniforms and boots rolled toward the cafe where quiet injustice had once been served with morning coffee. The sun would rise soon, but something else was already rising. Something stronger than anger, something deeper than shame, something that would not wait in silence any longer. The morning began like any other. The sky turned from dark gray to soft pink. Birds chirped on telephone wires and cars rolled down sleepy streets. The cafe lights flickered on at 6 o'clock sharp. The same smell of coffee and baked goods filled the air. The manager unlocked the door with one hand and held his phone in the other. He had not slept much. His inbox was full. At first, he ignored the messages. Then he tried to delete the comments. But they kept coming. Reviews appeared faster than he could erase them. Some mentioned racism. Others talked about the law. Many simply said they would never return. He told the baristas to smile extra wide. He told the cooks to work faster than usual. He told himself the internet always forgot in a few days. But the internet had not forgotten. And neither had the Marines. At 7 o'clock sharp, the bell above the cafe door jingled. A man stepped in wearing a clean uniform. His shoes were polished. His shoulders were straight. His voice was calm as he ordered a black coffee and sat at a corner table. He said nothing more. 7 minutes later, another man walked in. He wore jeans and a faded jacket, but his stance was military. He gave a small nod to the first man, ordered tea, and sat near the front. Then a woman entered. Her shirt was tucked neatly into her pants. She carried a service dog beside her. The dog wore a bright red vest. It looked alert but relaxed. She ordered a muffin and sat at the same table as the first man. They did not speak much. They did not need to. By 7:30, the cafe was almost full. Some came in pairs. Others came alone. Some wore parts of their old uniforms. Some wore hats with pins. Some had jackets with names and patches. Their voices were low, their actions quiet, but their presence was louder than any shout. People outside the cafe began to notice. Drivers slowed down. One person parked across the street and began recording with a phone. A local reporter from a small newspaper arrived, camera slung across his chest. He had received a tip about something happening at the cafe. He thought it might be a protest, but it did not look like any protest he had ever seen. Inside, the cafe was filled with calm. The only sounds were the hum of the machines, the clinking of spoons, and the quiet whispers of people ordering drinks. Then came the man from the original post. He walked in slowly, his dog by his side. His eyes scanned the room. He saw the uniforms, the faces. Some he knew, some he did not. Every head turned. No one clapped. No one shouted. They simply nodded, one by one. The kind of nod that said everything without words. The kind of nod you gave to someone who had stood in the fire and never backed away. He moved to an open table. The dog sat at his feet. He placed his hands on the table and took a breath. The manager stepped forward from the back. His face was pale. He opened his mouth to speak. But before he could say a word, a soft voice rose from the middle of the room. Service dogs are protected under federal law. Then another voice from the far side. Title III of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Passed in 1990. Another voice, calm but strong. Refusing entry is a violation. Up to $75,000 for the first offense. The manager froze. His hand trembled slightly. He looked around and saw faces that were not angry. Just firm. Just clear. A woman near the window placed a printed copy of the ADA guidelines on the counter. She did not look up. Then one of the men stood and walked to the door. He held it open. The girl who had been fired the day before stepped in. She wore regular clothes. She had not planned to come. But when she saw the video online and the messages, she felt something she had not felt in days. She felt seen. She walked slowly to the table where the veteran sat. He stood as she approached. She reached out her hand. He took it without hesitation. The cafe went still. From outside, more people watched through the windows. One boy asked his father what was happening. The father answered with a quiet smile. Respect is being served. The manager tried again to speak, but his words did not come. Instead, he turned and walked to the back, leaving the room filled with customers who were not there for free drinks or praise. They were there to show what loyalty looked like. Not the loud kind. Not the kind you see in movies. The kind that shows up when no one else will. The kind that sits quietly beside a friend who was wronged. The kind that orders coffee and leaves a tip, then stays to make a point without raising a voice. The girl found an open chair. She sat between two people she had never met. They made space for her without being asked. She smiled, just barely. For the first time since being fired, she felt okay. A woman at the next table passed her a note on a napkin. It read, "Thank you for standing up. We've got your back now." The cafe stayed full until noon. Some people stayed only a few minutes. Others stayed for hours. They came in waves. They ordered, sat, nodded, and left. Not a single plate was broken. Not a single word shouted. But something had changed. By the end of the day, the cafe owner arrived. He looked around the room and did not recognize most of the faces. He saw uniforms. He saw calm. He saw strength he could not control. The girl saw him too. She did not move. She did not speak. She did not need to. Her silence had become stronger than his power. And the message was clear. The people who stood up were not going anywhere. The next day the cafe opened like usual, but nothing inside it felt the same. The chairs had not moved. The tables were still square. The coffee still steamed in tall paper cups. The muffins were lined up behind the glass like little soldiers waiting to be chosen. But something invisible hung in the air. It was not loud. It did not speak. Yet everyone who walked in could feel it. The way a room changes when something big has happened. The way a hallway at school feels after someone has been unfairly punished. Quiet and tense and full of questions. The girl who had been fired did not return to work. She stayed home that morning. Her phone was still full of unread messages. Some from people she knew. Some from people she had never met. There were comments from parents. From teachers. From other workers who had been let go for reasons that were never written down but always understood. One message was from a woman in another state who had also been fired after speaking up for a black family turned away at a restaurant. Another came from a teenage boy whose brother was in the Navy and had once been told to use the side door of a diner because of his skin. Each message was short, but together they made a long story. A story that stretched across cities and towns and states. A story of quiet moments that too many people tried to forget. The girl scrolled slowly through them. Her hands did not shake anymore. She had not spoken to the manager since he let her go. She did not want to. He had shown her exactly who he was. In a park not far away, the veteran sat on a bench while his dog rested beside him. He had been quiet all morning. He had turned off the news. Turned off the alerts. He needed peace. But the peace would not come because the story had grown bigger than he ever expected. The local newspaper had run a short article about the crowd that gathered at the cafe. Then a radio host picked up the story and read it on air. The next day, a national blog mentioned the Marine who had been turned away. They called it the coffee stand of loyalty. But for him, it was never about coffee. It was about something deeper. It was about how often people like him were seen as heroes from far away but treated like problems up close. It was about how his skin made some people forget his medals. It was about how his service dog was questioned before his courage was respected. He rubbed the side of his face and looked at the sky. He remembered a time when his biggest worry was the next checkpoint. Now his biggest worry was whether people would ever stop pretending not to see. The park began to fill as the morning passed. But he stayed still. The dog stayed beside him. Two small kids ran past. One of them stopped and pointed at the dog. She asked if she could pet her. He said yes. The girl knelt down slowly. She looked at the dog's vest and asked what it meant. He smiled gently. He said it meant the dog had a job. The little girl said she wanted a job when she grew up. He told her to pick one where she helped people. She nodded and ran to catch her brother. He watched them go and felt something shift inside him. Not pain, not anger, something else. Something that whispered that maybe not everyone had stopped caring. Maybe some were just waiting for a reason to stand up. Back at the cafe, the manager paced in his office. His phone rang every hour with someone asking for a comment. He did not answer. A lawyer had told him to be quiet. A friend had told him to apologize. But he did neither. He did not know what to say. He kept asking himself why so many people cared about a girl who barely spoke and a man who only wanted a cup of coffee. He kept looking at the cameras, watching the video from that day, watching the moment he told the man to leave, watching the girl speak up. And the more he watched, the more he realized what everyone else already knew. He had messed up, not just because of a law, but because he had shown the world his heart. And it was not kind. Later that afternoon, a woman walked into the cafe. She wore a green shirt and glasses. She did not order anything. She walked straight to the girl's old coworkers and asked to speak to them. She was a reporter. She had come to hear the full story. She wanted to know what it felt like to work under someone who said one thing to customers and another behind closed doors. At first, the workers hesitated. Then one of them began to talk. He said the manager always looked at certain customers with sharp eyes. He said some people were told the cafe was full when it wasn't. He said they were told to clean tables quickly when certain folks came in but take their time when others did. The reporter took notes. She asked questions. She thanked them. Then she left. That night the story grew again. Not because of shouting. Not because of violence. But because people told the truth. And the truth walked on quiet feet. That same evening the girl stood outside the cafe. She was not there to protest. She just wanted to see it one more time. The place that had taken her voice and somehow helped her find it again. She watched people go in. She saw a new sign on the door. It said all service animals welcome. But there was no note of apology. No name. No mention of what had happened. She stood there for a long time. Then a car pulled up. The veteran stepped out, his dog beside him. He walked up to her. She smiled. He smiled back. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then he said thank you. She said you were worth it. The dog wagged its tail. And for a moment the noise of the world disappeared. Two people who had stood against something wrong now stood beside each other. Not as strangers, but as proof that kindness can be stronger than power. And that silence, when joined by many, is not quiet at all. Can march, can stand, can rise. The wind moved softly through the trees as the sun dipped low, spreading golden light across the town. It was a peaceful evening, but there was something different in the air. Not heavy, not loud, just different. As if the town had finally taken a breath after holding it for too long. The veteran walked his dog through the same park again. He had done this every day since it happened. Some people nodded when they saw him now. Others smiled a little longer than usual. A few even came over to say thank you. They told him he mattered. They told him what happened to him was wrong. They told him they had not known how bad it still was for black veterans until they read his post. But he did not walk for their thanks. He walked because walking helped him think. It helped him remember who he was before the pain. It helped him find calm again. That evening, as he passed the playground, a young man stopped him. The man looked nervous. He had a cap pulled low over his head and he kept adjusting the strap on his backpack. He said quietly that his uncle had served too. But his uncle never talked about it. Not because he did not care, but because people never listened. He told the veteran that seeing his story made him want to ask his uncle about his service. For the first time ever. The veteran smiled. He told the young man to do it soon. Stories matter, he said. Not just for the people who live them, but for those who need to hear them. Elsewhere in town, the girl who had been fired sat on her porch with her phone in her hand. She was staring at a message from someone who said they were starting a petition to bring her back to her job. 1,000 people had already signed. She did not know what to say. She was not sure if she wanted to go back. Not because she was afraid. She was not. But because she had changed. She had learned that standing up for someone can shake the ground under your feet. She had learned that doing the right thing is not always rewarded. And she had learned that some battles do not come with medals or trophies or even thanks. Sometimes they just come with peace in your heart. That was enough for her. Later that night, the cafe was almost empty. The manager sat at one of the tables alone. His phone had gone quiet. His staff was smaller now. Some had quit. Some had asked to be transferred. He looked out the window and saw the same streets he had seen for years, but they did not feel the same anymore. He thought about what he had done. He thought about how quickly the world had turned against him. But what weighed on him more was the look on the girl's face when she stood up for someone who did not look like her, and the stillness in the veteran's eyes when he was told to leave. Those images stayed in his mind longer than the angry emails or reviews. He did not know if he could change. But now he could no longer pretend the world would let him stay the same. The next morning a new sign appeared on the door of the cafe. It was printed in black letters on white paper. Not fancy, just clear. We serve everyone with respect. Service dogs included. Voices included. Humanity included. It did not fix everything. But it said something. And sometimes that is where change begins. Across town, the veteran opened his email to find an invitation. A local school had asked him to come and speak. The principal had seen what happened and wanted the students to hear from someone real. Not just stories from books, but from a person who had worn the uniform, who had faced injustice, and who chose to speak truth instead of silence. He thought for a moment. Then he typed back 2 words. I will. That week he stood before a class of 5th graders. Some listened wide-eyed. Some asked about his dog. One asked if it still hurt when people looked at him like he did not belong. He paused. Then he said yes. Sometimes it still did. But what mattered was what happened next. What mattered was what people chose to do after they saw it. That is when healing begins. One of the kids asked if heroes ever cried. He said yes. Every hero cries, but they still show up. That is what makes them heroes. Meanwhile, the girl received another letter. This time it came from a local group of teachers who wanted her to speak at an event about allyship. They said they had seen how she used her voice even when it cost her everything. They wanted others to hear how she found the strength to do that. She said yes, not because she wanted attention, but because she remembered what it felt like to feel invisible. And she wanted to make sure someone else knew how to stand tall when the world told them to sit down. And so the story continued. Not with riots, not with fire, but with kindness, with truth, with choices made in small rooms and quiet corners, with people who decided that silence was no longer good enough, with people who decided that standing up for someone else made the world safer for everyone. The cafe was still open. The park was still green. But the town had changed. Now, when people saw someone being mistreated, they remembered what had happened there. And they knew what to do. Not just watch. Not just walk away. But speak. Stand. Because respect is not a gift. It is a right. And people are not brave for asking to be treated fairly. They are brave for not letting the world shrink them down. You have a voice too. Use it. If the story moved you. If you believe everyone deserves dignity. If you believe kindness should be louder than hate. If you believe in standing up. Then share the story. Tell someone. Speak out when it is hard. Be the one who shows up. And if you want to hear more stories like this, if you want to be part of a space where truth matters and kindness wins, then subscribe. Because together, we write better endings.